Hi, I'm Karen Potter, Sustainability Ambassador for ideaXme. Today, I'm delighted to be speaking with James Longcraft, Director of Choose Water. Choose works to reduce plastic pollution, providing plastic-free alternatives to a range of products. Choose works with international partners to help reduce plastics and have partnered with African charities to provide support with infrastructure. In the UK, we have been interested in the evolution of changing the dynamics with our relationship with plastic. So many key celebrities and other influencers really came together in a strong voice a couple of years ago and encouraged government to take some action on single-use plastic specifically. So we started a surcharge on the plastic bag, and we've banned straws and other things like coffee stirrers. So there's been a large campaign here in the UK, which has been largely supported by a groundswell of support from citizens. And we're seeing, of course, there's a lot more engagement around the environment and sustainability, and it's citizen-driven activity and interest. So they played a really critical role in this. And I just wanted to explore with James today some of these themes around plastics, as his company is on the forefront of working to resolve some of these problems and provide solutions. So James, thank you for joining us today. And I would like to just welcome you and find out a little bit more about what you do and what you are working on to provide some of these solutions for these problems today.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Basically, I run a company called Choose, and we have developed a paper-based solution to replace plastic bottles. So we take recycled newspaper and we turn it into a fully biodegradable, compostable, and recyclable bottling solution. It's been a long road and it's a bit more complicated than that, but I'm sure we'll get into it later on. But yeah, no, so we're working with a number of different companies around the world to see if we can provide a viable alternative to the standard PET bottle.
And how did you become associated? How did your work become connected with Choose, and what's your role there? Can you tell us a little bit about how the company evolved and got started?
Yeah, so I actually started Choose Water a while back as a bottled water company. We used to just sell plastic bottles of water. And we did that for a couple of years, and we used to sell them at festivals, and we'd use the profit to support a charity partner called Water for Africa. And I was blissfully ignorant about what plastic was doing to the environment. And it was actually while we were doing some of these festivals here in the UK that we got a lot of our customers would say, "Oh, I don't do plastic anymore." And I was like, okay, because obviously you have to recycle it. I knew that, it's wasteful energy wise, but I didn't know about what it was doing to the oceans or landfills. So I did some research and frankly was horrified to be part of that. And my daughter had just been born and I didn't want to be a baddie basically by polluting the environment. So I made quite a rash sweeping statement that we were going to go plastic free overnight and just focus on our glass bottles for our water. Lost about 90% of our revenue, which was not the best move business wise, and spent a long time trying to find an alternative. So, we looked at the bioplastics and we looked at aluminium cans and all the different options. And what really struck me was that all the packaging on the market at the moment, the waste management is down to the customer. It has to go in a specific bin, whether that's recycling for plastic, recycling for metal, composting for bioplastics, they all have specific routes. And if the customer doesn't have access to that route, that packaging is going to harm the environment. So I thought to myself, how hard could it be to make something that could go into any bin, and if it goes into the environment, would just break down. So that was towards the end of 2017 that I sort of started working on the bottle itself. And it turns out it's really difficult. So it's taken us, up to this point. We launched our first commercially viable bottle in 2020. So it took us about 3 years worth of development to come up with our solution. But yeah, no, it's been an interesting couple of years.
It sounds like a very interesting journey, and one that was started from your personal determination and passion to make a change. How was your connection with the charities? You say in the beginning you started with your business linking some of your profits and using some of the profits to do charitable activity. How did that connection with Africa come about?
Well, obviously being a water company back then, so we've shifted away from water now more into a packaging company. But we're still trying to do our best for Water for Africa. When we started the water company, if I'm being brutally honest, we wanted a USP. Having the charity aspect was good for the brand. So we found Water for Africa and we went out to Gambia with them in 2016. And the work they do then there is just amazing. And the impact it has on people's lives, just delivering something that we take for granted so much here. I think before I went out on that trip, I was probably thinking, oh, we'll give a penny a bottle or, 10p a bottle, whatever it was. But having spent, a week there, it was very much, actually, you can have all of our profit because the work that they can do with it is amazing. So we had the best of intentions. And then obviously with this new bottle coming along, it's been phenomenally expensive to develop. So the profits have been low, but as we're coming out of it this year, we're looking to rekindle it and start, giving them some proper support going forwards, just because, the way that they carry out their water projects over there is just inspiring.
And when you were working with them, you weren't importing, you weren't bringing any of your products to them. You were going to help them with the infrastructure and helping with water distribution, water cleanliness. Are those some of the things that you were interested in?
Exactly. So we were selling water in the UK to provide infrastructure across West Africa. So they've got a really interesting model where they used sort of like local teams to install the water wells. They will put in the first well and then keep upgrading it. So from a simple hand pump to solar pumps to water towers to irrigation. And, they can really, those communities can use that water to really lift themselves up. And it was so inspiring that, we had to be involved. I just felt guilty that over the last couple of years, obviously with profits being so small, we've had to slightly dial that back. But we've got new investors in and things like that. So the whole 100% of profit thing is going to have to change because obviously, investors want returns. But, going forwards, we're definitely going to do everything we can to, keep supporting the work they do.
That's definitely the reality of getting the support of investment. It's that catch 22. It's difficult. You need the money to help build your business, but then also the profits shift a little bit. But definitely it will provide you the opportunity to reach out, probably, I imagine, in a broader way than you ever would.
Exactly. I'd much rather Water for Africa get a smaller piece of a bigger pie than a big piece of a small pie.
I brought up the question about exporting in the sense that I was thinking more about the bottle as well, but it sounds like the journey to from your charity in Africa was a slightly separate journey than the journey to move into the plastics-free bottling solution. So that seems like that you arrived at that conclusion as you were working here, providing bottled water here in the UK. How did you go about designing and finding the resources to create that bottle?
I get this question a lot. I studied chemistry at university, but I was a terrible chemist. I left with a third, so I wasn't brilliant, but I enjoyed the lab side of it. So when it came to sort of that pivotal moment where I decided how hard could it be to make one myself, it was trial and error. It was a lot of research on Google. I settled very quickly on a paper casing, using molded recycled newspapers because it's an existing technology. People have been making things out of paper for ages. So we could take that and then coming up with the biodegradable liner on the inside that isn't plastic and doesn't affect the product was the key challenge, I would say. And that was, again, when I was doing this, we didn't have huge R&D budgets and teams of scientists and state-of-the-art labs. It was me in my flat in Edinburgh. And so instead of coming up with some sort of crazy synthetic materials, I just turned to nature and asked the simple question, what is waterproof in nature? It turns out loads of stuff is. And it was a case of bringing all of those bits in and sort of trying them in different sort of orders, combining them in interesting ways and seeing how the chemistry reacted with the products inside. And, that for the last 2 years was our biggest challenge, getting that liner completely watertight, making sure it doesn't affect the products inside it, and getting it to be able to hold a wide range of products. So we've moved away from water to become a packaging company, and we're working with household products. We launched our own range of washing up liquids, hand soaps, hand sanitizers. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, but actually coming up with it was just a case of trial and error. Everybody asks, "Oh, did you have some sort of eureka moment when you figured it out?" It's like, no, it's been, "Oh, this bit's a bit better than it was last week. What happens if we do this? Oh, that's a little bit better than last week," and it's sort of been ongoing.
Were you able to use the materials that were readily available to you where you're located, or did you have to import and bring other natural materials from other locations?
So obviously with the paper for the casings, that's all locally sourced. Some of the ingredients for the liner are imported from overseas, but most of them are waste materials from larger industries. So obviously we wanted to keep the costs down as much as possible, because if we want to compete with plastic, we've got to be on a commercial scale, we need to be at a similar price point. So by using sort of waste materials that are normally burnt or just discarded, we've been able to keep the price down and pick up something that would have been wasted without us. It's all about giving sort of second life to existing materials.
Now, see, it seems to me that you've achieved something quite remarkable to come up with a product that is you're successfully marketing. Why aren't other companies doing the same, or why aren't they able to come up with packaging in the way you are? Now, I was going to cite that some major soft drink manufacturers have recently been found to be some of the biggest offenders when it comes to plastic pollution, and have been really resistant to change, citing the convenience of the plastic bottle. What do you say to those manufacturers about their use of plastic and their insistence on keeping plastics in the economy, and therefore keeping plastics in our ecosystem?
Well, I always say, plastic is given this sort of almost evil persona. Plastic is not malicious or anything. It's just a material, and it's very good at its job, and that's the problem that we're having. The problem of the plastic crisis is not the material; it is the end of life use of what we do with it. I think the large soft drinks manufacturers that are producing billions and billions should, I think for them, swapping to another completely different material would be extraordinarily expensive, and would throw up a lot of challenges. But I think the consumer, it will always be consumer driven, and the tide on plastic turning against it has been, like you said in the introduction, it is very much down to the consumer. And as people demand change, I think the big companies will have to listen, and they might drag their feet a little bit because of the cost implications. But once there are solutions out there, it will be a question of why aren't the big guys following suit as well. With that being said, we're working with some really large companies, and it might not be in the public eye, but I think a lot of these companies are doing a huge amount of work into looking into alternatives, but just haven't crossed that public image bridge yet.
So right now, in that position you're in, who are the best allies that you're working with that are from a business perspective, or perhaps they're charities, or perhaps they're campaign groups?
I'm gonna have to be super coy about this. We can't go into too much who we're working with commercially. Our biggest ally is our consumers. So we sell our own products from our website, and we're doing that mainly to prove the technology works. So can we ship it around the country? Do consumers like it? What happens if it's dropped through a letterbox? All these sort of little questions that we're working on. And it's the people that have been buying our bottles, every week for the last 9 months, and providing that feedback. That is our biggest ally. And then that being said, Water for Africa, we work closely with Sky, who launched their Sky Ocean Ventures campaign a couple of years ago now, and they've been instrumental to getting us to where we are. So yeah, no, there's no way that I've done this by myself. I've got a great team here in Edinburgh that are helping. I've got a great board of advisors as well. We try and work with everybody if possible.
It seems like the pace of change is really picking up. Now, I know that with COVID and with all of the global restrictions and the change of lifestyle, I'm sure that business has been interrupted, or looks perhaps a bit different than it did before this time a year ago. What do you see as the pace of change since you started to work on a plastic-free solution to your packaging?
I mean, just straight off the bat, the amount of inquiries we get daily from companies, I think in the last year has doubled week on week, which is fantastic. It really shows that companies are listening to consumers and are actively seeking out alternative packaging. And I think this probably isn't completely correct, but I always think that the tide on plastic changed after David Attenborough's brilliant Blue Planet. That episode, I think it was episode 5 or whatever it was, that showed the impact that plastic was having on the oceans. I think from that day, there hasn't really been a week where something about plastic hasn't been in the news. And I think the media is really they're on side with this. Nobody's trying to cover it up or hide it away. It's a very openly discussed problem that we're facing, and I think the more and more consumers read about it and see it constantly, the more educated they get, and then it's getting to the point now where not only businesses are actively looking for alternative packaging to get ahead of the trend, but consumers are also looking at inside their own homes at, right, how can I be more plastic free, and the amount of inquiries we get about from plastic free lifestyle blogs and things like that, sort of how can I remove plastic from the kitchen, for example. But no, I think the rate of change is extraordinary, and we've been very lucky with our timing. I think if I'd done this bottle even 5 years ago, I don't think we would have had anywhere near the traction that we do at the moment.
Well, certainly, Sir David's efforts, and I mean his lifelong efforts to raise awareness about the environment, have had a real impact. Certainly in the UK, but that impact has reached globally, and that episode of that series had a huge impact. On the back of that, we saw government regulation change, and for that, it's a full circle of people getting involved and getting active, and then beginning to demand change, and businesses responding, and government saying we can also be leaders on this and we can help. And of course, in the UK, we have been the first out of the chute with a number of these policies, and it's been very effective. What else can government be doing now to help us move away from these petroleum-based plastic products and getting into a more environmentally sustainable packaging?
Well, I think so part of the plastic problem, obviously you've got the plastic that's already in the environment. How can we clean that up and make it better? The plastic that's in circulation, how can we reuse that material to keep it going forever? And then sort of sourcing new alternatives and stopping new plastic being made are the sort of 3 avenues that I think we need to tackle. So even increasing the infrastructure in the country to deal with PET that's already in circulation, so more recycling centres, making it easier for people to recycle their existing plastic, and then more infrastructure on how that recycled plastic is actually used in the UK, and then education is really paramount. So making sure that especially children starting young know that if they are using a plastic product, they need to be responsible with how they deal with the waste afterwards. And then obviously, well, we've had a huge amount of support from the government, with Innovate UK grants, and sort of they really are putting their money where their mouth is, helping companies like us be able to get our foot in the door. The plastic world is hugely competitive, and coming up with something completely novel and trying to sort of shoehorn it into the industry is very difficult. And with their Innovate UK arm, they are putting their money where their mouth is, and they offer a huge amount of support to anybody that's got a plastic alternative idea. There is support out there from the UK government to put it into action. You just need to be a bit proactive and sourcing it, and you need a really good accountant. But apart from that, it's quite simple.
You certainly make it sound easier than I'm sure I'm sure your journey yet.
It's to give the government their due. I think they are, I don't think they're hiding away or shying away from the fact that change is needed. I think obviously there's always more that can be done when tackling any problem. But no, I think they are doing a really good job, and I think education and increasing the infrastructure to deal with the plastic that's already in circulation is really important.
Well, it's true that the UK is a global leader in policy around a lot of this. We have a Climate Change Act, we have a net zero law. So sometimes some of us who are on the ground campaigning think there's a lot more that can be done, but there's a lot more that can be done globally that we can do also to encourage other governments. And in that vein, I wondered, you're based in Scotland, and at the end of the year, you'll be hosting the COP26 negotiations. Is that having an impact on life in Scotland as you see it, or on your business? Is there anything you're planning on doing at the COP conference?
I'm still waiting for my invitation, but no, I think it's a case of obviously having it up here is fantastic, and it will bring a huge spotlight to the entire Scotland and what's being done up here. And again, it just comes down, the more fuss we can make and the more sort of options we can offer to companies in terms of solutions and stuff is really important. But yeah, I think it's a really exciting time for the entire industry, coming up with alternatives. And we're not the only ones out there, with solutions, and things like COP are a great place to sort of slightly showcase them and to show the world that we are pushing ahead, and hopefully they'll be inspired by some of the fantastic UK companies that are striving to make a difference.
Indeed, I think it will be an opportunity for the UK to showcase many of the things that we're doing here, including Innovate UK and a number of the government-backed programs, which are really helping us in a number of areas, not just in the plastics and packaging, but in a lot of the areas that leading us to the net zero economy, which is so important. I wanted to know what you thought about how COVID was affecting your business and what you saw as the challenges on the back of COVID, and what the hope is that life will look like for you guys after we get through this.
It's been a weird year, hasn't it? Well, last year. I always forget it's 2021 now.
Starting out as a weird year as well.
Yeah, well, exactly. We're not much better so far. No, so COVID was difficult for us. Obviously, a lot of the work we do is working with the large companies. And when COVID first struck, obviously there was a huge amount of uncertainty going forwards, and a lot of companies have slightly closed their doors and went, right, we're going into sort of survival mode. We're not going to be spending money on researching new packaging solutions. We're going to, hunker down and make sure the business survives, which is completely fair. So that had a bit of a slowdown for us. We had to furlough quite a few of our staff. Obviously, we had to stay at home, so the factory shut down. But what was great is, the team that remained on, worked really hard. So we've actually taken this time, rather than pushing forward commercially, we've sort of, again, as the larger companies, that we had a look internally of how can we improve the technology. And the big thing that we're working on now is fully automating the production of that technology, so we can start producing a serious amount of bottles that can actually start taking not a big chunk of plastic away, a very, very tiny chunk, but still millions of bottles, not thousands of bottles. So in that case, it's bought us some time to improve, our own facility and our technology. But the big worry is obviously, with the global pandemic, single-use items have skyrocketed in use. Things like hand sanitizers, face masks, all of these things that are plastic that are now have become the norm. You have your tiny bottle of hand sanitizer. When it's finished, you throw it away and you get another one. Every business in the country is now going through hand sanitizer left, right, and center. It is producing a huge amount of plastic waste that before the pandemic wasn't there. I think, this pandemic is going to linger globally for a long time, and that that global trend of using more single-use plastic is, it's slightly going back on the good work that we were doing, with the trends in 2019. But that being said, I mean, just to, not to blow out, we do a plastic-free hand sanitizer, and there are lots of refills, systems that are going on out there. So I think despite the increase in single-use plastic, I think, the consumer is still aware of what's going on with the plastic side of things. I don't think that it's completely dwarfed the problems that we're facing. But no, it's been a really odd year for us, but we're still here, which I think is the key. And we've got a better product than we did when we started. So we managed to scrape through. But I know a lot of businesses haven't, and that's a real shame. And it's going to take a while to recover, I think.
Yes, I think that as you say, there's quite a few businesses in the same situation, some that haven't been able to make it through. But for all of us, whether they're small businesses or large global businesses, it is going to take some time to recover and for us to get on the track. And when I said return to normal, of course, many of us know that normal may not be the normal we remember for some time. And we're grappling with how we can provide a safe and yet connected world, because I don't think there's many of us who and myself included, who want to live my life on Zoom and live exclusively in my the walls of my confines of my home and nearby parks. So we're looking forward to the changes, the vaccine, the opportunities for us to return to some amount of normalcy, but we recognize that is going to look a bit different. And in some ways that there may be some positives, like more of these conversations on Zoom, but not exclusively the foundation of our life, I think. And so it's going to be a little bit of a hybrid as we go forward. But the one thing that is certain is that the threats to the environment and climate change have not changed. Despite the fact that we've got, we're all living, many of us, in a severe lockdown restriction, climate change still remains the number one threat and the biggest challenge that we faced. And we need to soldier on and become more sustainable. And we need to start working towards that net zero economy, which I think many people are becoming increasingly aware of. I just wondered, is there anything you suggest that listeners can do to help usher in a more sustainable future when it comes to the packaging?
It's just a case of being more conscious of what you are purchasing and how you're dealing with the here in the UK we do have recycling centres, and I think all councils offer recycling. So when you finish with your waste, just be conscious of what you're doing with it, basically. Obviously look for alternatives that are plastic free to start with. There's a great company in Edinburgh called Choose Packaging that offer a few bits and bobs that are plastic free. But no, it's all about education and just being more aware with what we're doing. When you're walking around the supermarket, if you're buying, like, even simple things, if you want some bananas, get the ones that aren't packaged in plastic, not the ones in the plastic bag. And if everybody starts doing little changes like that, then that will show to the supermarkets that people aren't buying the ones in plastic, so they'll stop producing them in plastic. And it will be a slow change, but everybody has that power to start making a difference as a consumer. And what I don't want any of the listeners to think is, oh, it's just me. Well, it doesn't really matter if I buy it. It's only one straw, said 6 billion people. So everybody does have the power to implement real change and to live more sustainably, just educate yourselves about everything. How can I drive less? Can I walk more? Um, can I go onto electric heating, not gas? All these sort of things. Who's my electricity supplier? Could I be a sustainable electricity supplier? So yeah, I think there's loads of things that can be done, and from a sort of packaging side, it's just being more aware of the waste that you're creating.
I think that's really very good advice, and I think that consumers and citizens, we have a lot of power, and there's a lot we can do in our own behaviors to make the changes, and also to encourage the businesses that we engage with and the products that we use, as well as government, to continue to help us by putting the right regulations in place. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your own background, maybe a little bit about how you came to become interested in water and delivering water and through festivals, and then maybe a little bit
Yeah,
about how you think you were influenced in the course of your life and your career. Maybe somebody who sticks out in your mind that had a bit of an impact on you and the direction your life has taken.
absolutely. Well, I mean, straight off the bat, I was not. I've not been an environmentalist for my entire life. It wasn't something that, if I'm being honest, that I really knew anything about. I was blissfully ignorant. So, I left university and I went to work in oil and gas, selling subsea construction vehicles, so pipe lay vessels and stuff like that. So I was on the wrong side of the fight, very much pushing for oil. And then sort of decided that I'd quite like to work for myself. And I dabbled with a couple of things for a bit and sort of settled on water because it had really good margins, basically. And it's as simple as that. I thought it was a good idea. And then obviously, since that day of starting Choose Water back then, working with the charity, beginning to look into plastic waste, things like that, it's sort of been a ongoing progression. And I think, what I've learned in the last, 5 years about the environment is quite frankly terrifying. And I think the more people look into it, they'll realize that there is, a huge problem. I think everybody is aware that, climate change is real, and I don't think we have too many skeptics here in the UK. I'm sure there are some, but I was by no means, an environmentalist from, birth. I wasn't recycling, everything in the cot. It's been a learning curve. And I think, the big thing for me was, making that change from being an employee to running my own company was the big shift that sort of kick-started it all. And I think more people should do it. I think small businesses are brilliant. And, when I started the company, I didn't have a huge amount of responsibilities. I didn't have children, I didn't have a mortgage, I was renting, it was fine. I could take that risk. And I think a lot of young people don't take that risk because it's sort of almost instilled in them that you've got to go to work and you work for someone else for 25 years, and then you can start looking at doing your own thing once you're an industry expert and all of this. Whereas I think that actually, the best time to have a go at running your own business is when you don't have the big mortgage and the 3 kids and the dog and, bills and things. If you're 22, you've left university, give it a go. But make sure it's a sustainable business that's going to change the world.
Sounds like you've gone on quite a journey, and I think many of us are going on that journey. I mean, when we started to understand climate change and the impact on the environment, many of us, myself included, didn't understand and didn't know about what our contribution was how it was affecting the environment and what the outcome was. And I think that that's a journey that all of us have to go on. It's a personal journey that we all do. And it's
exactly, nobody's born knowing all these things straight away. It is something that you've got to educate yourselves on. And it can be pretty bleak. It is pretty doom and gloom. But I don't think it's too late to fix it. I think it will take a lot of effort to fix it and a lot of money, but I think, if we all band together, we can. One thing that I did that really shocked me was that I collected all my waste that I made in one day. So just normal day, every, piece of packaging, every bit of litter that I created, I just put it in a little plastic bag, and the amount was shocking. And, as a little piece of homework for everybody listening is just give it a go. See how much waste you produce in one day. And if that doesn't inspire you to change, I don't think much will.
Yes, I can relate to that as well. We do produce a lot of waste, and we need to do what we can do to reduce that waste. And there are many things we can do. And part of it is just taking that first step to realize it. And then the incremental steps you can take can have a very big impact. You think one straw, but as you say, one straw times 6 million, 6 billion, it starts to add up very, very quickly. I wanted to ask, is there a person who inspired you, somebody or some story that resonated with you as you're going through your journey and developing your career? Is there somebody you'd single out to say, this person was super influential to me?
Oh, to be tactful, obviously my partner. She was been instrumental to everything. Without her support, there's no way I could have done it. And to be completely cliched, as we mentioned before, Sir David Attenborough, when I was developing that bottle, I was in a tiny sort of garage in Kirkcaldy, which is in Fife in Scotland. It was cold and wet, and I had been working on this bottle for ages. And this was before Blue Planet came out. And then, watching that episode and then seeing, the media and public response off the back of it, really did spur me on to finish creating the bottle. But at the same time, I have not done this by myself. There are so many, we've got a fantastic board of advisors that we put together that, every day help me and with the business direction and what we're meant to be doing. So I've got a really good team around me, and I don't want to embarrass them by naming and shaming them, but they know who they are.
We can check out those. Well, I think that's an important point, that it really does take the sum of us to achieve these great things. Very few things are done in isolation. So it's a team, and it's the people around us that can have such a big influence. And I'm sure Sir David would be delighted to know that as you were sitting in your cold garage working on these solutions, that that's the kind of thing that just. And you're not the only one at that moment, I'm sure, having some kind of
exactly
some point in their life that really needed that. And those are the kind of things that spur us on. It's been a really, I've been really enjoyed talking to you. It's been such a great journey to hear where you've come from and what you've achieved, and the fact that you guys are still going in the face of all of these challenges. I wondered if there was anything else that we didn't cover today that you'd like to add, tell our listeners.
No, I think we covered. Thank you very much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, if the listeners are interested, if you just Google Choose Packaging, we pop up. Have a look at what we're doing. There's more information on how the bottle's made, what it's made from. You can order some if you fancy it, and it's sort of got a bit more about the sort of background of the company and sort of what we're trying to achieve. So apart from that, I think. I think we covered most of it. Is there anything else you'd like to ask?
I think same. I think that we really had a good opportunity to explore a lot of different themes in relations to your business, in relation to sustainability, and even consumer roles, things that people can do, and maybe somebody from the government will be listening as well, and getting some ideas on how they can continue to help regulate and bring about these changes. So. So thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it, James, and all the best to you.